Hi, all. Welcome to our latest panel. We're going to be exploring the different implications as well as the unprecedented environment in which we live in today, and especially its impact on small and medium businesses. COVID-19 has obviously brought with it a host of new challenges as well as new opportunities. And with me today is an incredible international panel. My name is I'm Michael Sheets. I'm a CNBC space reporter, and with me today is a group of CEOs all across the world who are exploring what this environment looks like. Now, first up, we have Nobu Okada. He's the CEO of Astroscale. He founded Astroscale in Singapore in 2013 out of a strong desire to address the growing threat of space debris. He used his personal funds as seed money and has expanded his team steadily with offices in Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States while steadily raising capital. The team is known as Space Sweepers, and their mission is to secure long term spaceflight safety by developing new ways of removing debris from orbit. Our next panelist is the CEO of ISI, a Finnish synthetic aperture radar satellite company, Rafał Madruski. He co-founded ISI in 2012 and to date has helped raise more than $150 million in venture capital, bringing him with him a deep domain expertise in engineering through his years of research, as well as Dr. Oren Milstein, the CEO of STEMRAD. He's also the chief scientific officer of the company, which is an Israeli-American company focused on developing and manufacturing personal protective equipment that specializes in ionizing radiation. Finally, last but not least, is Lynette Tan, the CEO of Singapore Space and Technology. She's the co-founder and CEO, as well as the executive director of Singapore Space and Technology, which for 12 years has served as the business federation for the local growing space community in Singapore. It offers a variety of services to space companies, including business consultancy, networking, as well as technical training for the industry. With that said, we're going to get right into a period of Q&A because this panel has quite a variety of thoughts on how this environment has been shifting through 2020. First, my first question is going to be directed to Dr. Milstein and then Miss Lynette Tan. If you look at how the pandemic has hit the space industry, especially younger private companies, how hard has this industry been impacted, and is it as bad as you expected? First, we'll start with Dr. Milstein.
No, thank you, Michael. It's really great to be here. So I'll try to provide my 2 cents of knowledge on the matter. I am a scientist and an entrepreneur. At the same time, finances are extremely important, and COVID has indeed impacted all of us without question. With that said, I would say that it's very early still in the process of this pandemic to really decide on the impact, how severe versus how acceptable the outcome has been. I would say that to date, I've been surprised for the better as far as survival of companies, small to medium-sized companies. But at the same time, I am concerned regarding smaller companies that have yet to establish an investor base to support them through this struggling era. And I'm also concerned about companies that are strictly sales driven and really rely on revenue coming in really on a monthly basis to offset any potential debt that those companies have. Surprisingly, and this is the good takeaway from this era and this pandemic, is that companies were able to adapt, and companies were able to look into their investor base and survive. And mostly companies that have had existing contracts and are not in the need to capture a new business have thrived, even I would say, during this time. So it's a mixed bag, I would say, and it's still early to say.
Lynette, your thoughts as well?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think it's really, to echo what Oren said, it is still early stage. I think we have not yet reached the inflection point of the pandemic. Um, I do see a light at the end of the tunnel, and of course, we all hope it's not a train. Um, but there are good and embedded it, and I think it's really a time where I felt very strongly, and I have observed that the tough gets going. So businesses, small or mid-size, as you know, SSTL is, with good, strong business fundamentals, they would have been quite okay in seeing through it. And of course, we all know in the space industry, it has long gestation. We're always dealt with challenges, flight delay, supply and integration. It's a given, but of course, we're seeing this as an unprecedented situation. But I thought it was really good because a lot of times for small, mid-size, you're aggressive for growth. You see opportunities and you want to step it up. But I think this serves as a good reminder that we should not lose sight of good business fundamentals. Because when a pandemic hits or something hits, no one would know. And for business owners, it's good to say to always manage that trade-off. There is an opportunity, but what am I risking? Am I going to lose everything if something happens? I can tell you honestly, that was a debate that within my organization we had, because we've had a good run for 10 years. And we were always like, why are we not doing this? Can we do more? Can we go further? But we always come and say, you know what, let's just have good business sense and good business fundamentals. And it's really super paying off now. So we're very grateful for it. I do also again echo our Oren's point in that smaller companies that have not yet established, the investment relationship, their customer base, they probably, in my humble opinion, will be very badly hit. It's quite hard to do business deals, especially in space tech, over Zoom or however like GoTo or Skype. It is quite hard to do that, and investors and customers would prefer to be conservative in this time. So unfortunately, if the foundation again, the base is not strong, they tend to be the hardest hit. Then my advice to them would be what we have seen many startups that SSTL supports. They've come to SSTL, they go to someone with a good relationship base, tap onto their relationship, and use them as multipliers to establish connection and slowly, keep going. And don't try to do everything yourself. It's really a time to establish partnerships with very strategic partners now. Thank you.
In on that thought. My next question is going to be directed to Nobu and then Rafal. One of the ideas of this current funding environment is that those that raised funding well in advance of the pandemic are said to be among those in a quote unquote valley of death. Essentially, you are so far out from the last time you raised fundraising that it's become difficult to raise further funding when needed during this environment. Have you seen that severity to be true, and what's the fundraising environment look like for you? No, but I think you might be muted still. I still can't hear you. Could anyone else just to jump in until we resolve Nobu's audio issues? Rafal, could you jump in on this question and offer your thoughts as well?
Sure. So I think the situation is being already well described by Oren and Linetti. In a way, what we have seen kind of as a general business problem, let's say, expands or extends beyond just kind of a day-to-day governance, but it goes into the fundraising, right? And indeed, if you have raised significantly prior to the pandemic and you are still a small company, so your kind of your risk of go-to-market strategy increases, then raising again during a pandemic might prove to be more challenging. I think at least ISI, as we have recently shown, we've managed to raise around during the pandemic. We have managed to finalize that fundraising, and of course that's the best situation that you can have if you can have it. But I do think that raising around during a pandemic, if you are a smaller company, will be much harder, right? Because of that intrinsic risk that the pandemic has brought to us, which was described by Oren and Linety so well in their moment.
Thanks, Rafal, and I think that's a point well taken given the situation. I'm going to go now back to Nobu. Nobu, can you hear us? Looks like we're still having a little bit of technical difficulties there. In terms of what opportunities folks see in the marketplace now, and Nobu, I'm certainly going to come back to you for that fundraising and environment question. But when you, Lynette, when you look to how you're addressing folks and helping them understand a little bit better the situation they're in, what opportunities are you giving to different companies and advising that they look for in this current environment?
Yeah. Well, if I could go first, to be very fair, launches are still happening. We've had a few launches, from the Ariane Vega. So there is still momentum that's going. For companies with good resources, they're in a good position. I think they should keep going because this is going to increase the difference, the gap between them and their next competitor. Right, because everyone is most companies would be struggling. So if you're able to pull ahead, it will go a long way. So I mean, I just can speak from my example because I haven't been going out to meet too many companies in person. But for us, so we've been hiring, and we think this is a tremendous opportunity to invest in knowledge, in the capabilities, so that when the uplift comes, and we don't know when, it could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, it could be 2 years, we don't know when, but we want to be prepared. And this is my advice to companies with resources. Unfortunately, for companies with scarcity in resources, you really want to go on a slow burn, maintain, pivot, look for new business opportunities. I think that's tremendously important. There are beneficiaries in this pandemic. It's a good thing out of a bad thing. So look for those opportunities. Definitely digitalization. Definitely people are feeling a little bit more insecure. That could be an understatement. So there will be more interest in having a defense product that protects the companies or individuals. So look for these type of opportunities and then think ahead. Be prepared to really, scrap the business plan and say, I'm going to do this now, and my core technology supports it. And you could still come out a winner. It will be challenging, but it's challenging for everyone. Thank you.
I think that's a very fair assessment of the environment, and thanks for those pieces of advice as well, Lynette. That's it's certainly going to be helpful for many folks that would be tuning in. I want to direct this question as well then to Rafal. Rafal, since you are in the synthetic aperture radar market and broadly the Earth observation market, what kind of demand have you seen from for your product as well as your imagery, and how is that changing given the environment as opposed to where you guys were at the beginning of the year?
Right. So I guess maybe it's fair for me to start by saying that at the beginning of the year, when the pandemic hit, we've decided to take it very, very seriously. I think no one really knew what's going to happen. And I'm still a little bit cautious about assessing what really is going to happen. So we've decided to lower all our annual numbers and go into more like survival type of mode. I think what we have seen, this is also being brought up by others over here, is that the customers that you have had. So for companies that were mature enough to have already established a certain set of relationships, those customers want to order more. The pandemic definitely creates a certain sense of insecurity among different users worldwide, not only the public ones, but also the private ones. And so people are seeking for new ways of knowing what's going on around the world, especially now as you can travel less. and information tends to travel a little bit slower as well. So we've seen increased demand among the customers that already were our customers. But I definitely have to say that the new relationships are just so much harder to establish, right? And I guess that's just true for everything. That's the same with fundraising. Really, if you want to build up a relationship, trying to do it without this personal touch is so much harder. I think maintaining relationships over Zoom, that's possible, but building new ones over Zoom is increasingly harder, which is why the new entrants are going to have a little bit of a harder situation now in comparison to established companies.
Thank you, Rafal. I really appreciate that. And I do want to come back then to hear Nobu, which I believe we've gotten back here on audio. Um, the Zoom era and the
Can you hear me?
webcast era is nothing but challenging. But thank you so much for bearing with us and getting back online here. Nobu, I wanted to give you a chance to address that question about fundraising that we talked about earlier. When you look at the environment for fundraising, what's that been like for Astroscale, and what are you guys looking at right now in terms of your runway?
Thank you. Can you hear me now? And then thank you very much for having me here. Sorry about the technical problem. Japan is late at night and my PC might be sleepy a little bit when I'm back. Regarding the fundraising, hey Michael, there's a breaking news here. We just closed our CZ round with additional funding of 51 million US dollars. This latest round brings the total investment raised to 191 million in total. And this makes Astroscale the most funded on-orbit servicing and logistics company globally, and the most funded space venture company in Japan. So to be honest, the COVID-19 is tough topic. We've been quite busy in ensuring the employees' health, and we had to reassess all the business aspects, including stabilizing the supply chain, reassessing our scenarios. So, but it seems like we are doing good. Yeah. So this is new news.
Well, thank you, Nobu, and yeah, you guys heard it here first. Astroscale closing a new round of $51 million in financing. Congratulations to you, and I especially want to highlight that comes as Rafal and ISI have also raised new financing as well. So certainly there are investors looking for opportunities in this marketplace, and I really really appreciate you guys asking like real world color into our conversation as to what that looks like. I want to go then more towards the actual business sense of how you guys might be shifting operations. So I'll direct this question to Oren. Oren, when you look at operationally what's changed, obviously clean rooms and hardware and spacecraft aside are one thing, but you work in the PPE world and understand how businesses need to change their operations to continue operating and continue moving forward. What's that look like for your business as well as the businesses you work with?
Right, yeah, good question. So operationally, we've seen decreases in efficiencies, but also increases in efficiencies. A decrease had to do with really coping with the pandemic itself, as far as limiting the number of people that can attend the office or the site or the manufacturing facility. Some of these limitations were voluntary from our end to keep our workers safe, but also some were imposed by the government. Currently in Israel, there's a very harsh lockdown to prevent a further spread of the COVID-19 virus. But I would say that as far as efficiency is improving, so we've seen an amazing thing that the remote work really works, so to speak, and especially between our two companies, one in Israel and one in Florida, the daughter company being in Florida, we've seen an increase in efficiency of communications during the pandemic versus what was prevailing before the pandemic. And this is because of a shift in mindset of the people on the ground in Israel, that really realized that, if they can communicate between their home in Israel and the office in Tel Aviv, why not communicate just as fine with the office in Tampa? So I would say that the pandemic really removed the borders, really closed the distance of the Atlantic Ocean that really was a barrier as far as our functionality as a group, and is no more such. So it's really a mixed bag of deficiencies versus efficiencies that we're seeing here. A very interesting time for everybody.
And I appreciate the specific example as well, because I think that's a lot of what people are wondering is when you look to what efficiencies can come out of this, kind of lowering the distance virtually is quite a jump forward for many companies, even if you can't necessarily establish new customers and new partners as we move forward. I do want to look to the maybe more grim side of this environment, which is when you look across, and this question I'll first direct to Lynette, and then I really do want to hear Nobu's thoughts on this. When you look across the environment, do you see any common themes or patterns to companies that have not survived the pandemic? And obviously, what survival looks like for them, whether it doesn't necessarily mean just bankruptcy, but also closing operations. Do you see any kind of patterns in the space business as to why folks might have had to have closed up shop? Lynette?
Okay. Yeah, me first. Okay. I think the grim stories tend to happen when you have cross-border transactions. So the customer is based in a country, and literally, the supplier, the company is in another continent, because the logistics has broken down. Physical logistics has broken down. So if you want to integrate parts, you want to do IOD, and you're buying components from different continents, different countries, from different borders, that will be extremely challenging. And I think literally for a few months, global logistics slowed down. And then, of course, there's that tiering of, critical products that should be shipped, and then products that are be more commercial that might not be shipped. So I think these tend to hit companies. And, in Singapore, we're a small island, right? Japan is an island, but it's a big island. So in Singapore, we're a small island. So when the customers are overseas in Europe or in America, in the US, it was really hard. It would be really hard for companies to do that physical hardware integration. And then, so I think these are the companies that are probably not in a super good state, or they have to physically travel for launch, because we don't have a launch site in Singapore. So if they want to do IOD, or they want to, piggyback on certain payload, it is quite challenging. So again, physical, in the business, in the hard space tech business, you still need that physical connection. And that part of that value chain would be very, very badly hit. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynette. I really appreciate that color. And I do want to move then to Nobu. When you look at across the environment of companies that haven't fared very well during this situation, what are any common themes or patterns you see emerging?
I have so many friends in the space industry, and then I see, yes, that's right. I mean, for example, small suppliers are hardly hit by the COVID-19. They have kind of a short runway of the cash, and then they totally depend on the large depend on the specific customers. So they hit hard. But I also see the pattern for winners. So there are a couple of deciding factors in the company's survival during time development. And then one is a compelling vision. The two is a clear business plan. The three is a great team to make the vision a reality. So I think if the company, small company, have these three, I think they have survived, and I believe we are also part of that. The companies who have these three. So that's a pattern I've seen, observed.
And I think that's really helpful for understanding then people as they further build their businesses what they can expect. We only have a few minutes here left, and I want to get just your 10 to 15-second piece of advice. I mean, essentially your elevator pitch from a virtual elevator to the people on the ladder behind you. If you're reaching down to companies that are smaller than your own that are looking for opportunities, what is that piece of advice? And I'll go first to Oren, that you would give, and in just 2 sentences to someone that is looking at this environment and isn't sure what to do next.
Yeah, I would say 15 seconds is not enough, but I'll give it a try here. I would say definitely focus on excellence within existing contracts. Focus on improving current assets of the company, be it the IP, be it marketing, be it investor relations. Focus on what you have, okay? Worry less about expanding, worry less about hitting the forecast, because this is time to conserve and do well on what you have already.
Take this next to Lynette.
Well, I would say this is the time to collaborate. It's not the time for sharp competition. It's not the time to go head on. It's really a time for a company to want to survive, to take the hand that's reaching out to them and collaborate. Having said that, be judicious with your due diligence. You have to still do your due diligence, but be open-minded about collaboration so that both parties can emerge as winners versus both parties, dying in this graveyard that's piling up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. And I'll go next to Raphael on the question. What would be your 15-second piece of advice?
I think what I usually tend to do now is expand on the common saying, get to know. I mean, you get to know your best friends during the hard times. I think it expands to you get to know the best investors during the hard times. I think people during the good times tend to be very light in their due diligence. I think now is the time when you recognize which investors are going to really stay with you throughout the bad times, and it is really dependent on them whether you can make it through. They should be able to support you, and they make this investment long term as well, so they should be prepared for both good times as well as bad times. So now it's definitely the time when we can filter through this. If there is one more advice besides the investors thing, I will say stay cost conscious and agile. The situation develops really, really fast, and what is the right strategy for 6 months down the line? I will never say. I will probably know what was the best strategy for a month down the line, and then you have to reevaluate.
Great. And then to Nobu. Nobu, what do you see as something that people should take away?
Just 15 seconds. So don't give up. The recovery phase will come soon. Until then, it's really hard. We cannot travel, and it's really hard to make a new business. But the day will come. Recovery day will come.
Now, I mean, we're doing a virtual live session as there is another webcast going on for a launch, suborbital payload research mission out of West Texas. It's an exciting time still, I think, to be in the space and launch business, whichever piece of it you might be. I wanted to speak a little bit more optimistically then to the future of what excites you about what's upcoming, and I do want to give you each a voice to kind of tell people what you're looking forward to, not just as 2020 comes to a close, but with 2021 coming up. So, Rafal, I want to go to you first here. I know ISI has a number of important SAR missions coming up. What excites you about the year ahead?
Yeah, so I think from our perspective, and maybe more globally from the SAR data perspective, is really the increase in the data volume that's going to be made available to the users. I think it starts really today, as you, Michael, know, we've just published an archive publicly available of 18,000 images. Those images are available. You can download the file from our website. And if you are a researcher or a student or whomever, you can just freely use these images and play with them. And if you need full res, you can get in touch with us. So that amount of imagery made available on the market within a short period of time is really exciting from the perspective of learning how to extract information out of raw data, which has always been and still is the missing piece between the space-based infrastructure and solving the real life problems, right? So with that in mind, with our new missions, we've got 4 more satellites coming up this year, 8 more satellites coming up next year. I think we are going to see a growth of the constellations, with other companies adding constellations as well. This will just generally drive the stream of data, and I think that's the year. 2021 is really the year when we will see a 10x increase in the amount of data available. Let's see whether the industry will manage to convert this into information which is useful. But I'm really hopeful about that.
Excellent. And I want to then direct that question as well to Nobu. I know that you have the ELSA D mission coming up shortly. Maybe you can give us a little more of a time frame on when you guys are looking to launch that, and what then Astroscale's business looks like beyond.
Thank you. The space sustainability is quite important because the density of the space objects have reached to the critical level when where the chain reaction of the collision can happen at any near future. So we have to really think about space sustainability. So we're going to have the world first debris removal demonstration, end-to-end demonstration LCD quite soon. We are planned to launch toward the end of this year. But we are just waiting for the final confirmation of the launch timing. But after that, we have a following project so that we can provide the services, including end-of-life services, active debris removal service, life extension services. So we are going to have a broad range of the own services quite soon. Thank you.
Fantastic. And Lynette, when you look at Singapore as a growing space player, what excites you about what your firm is looking at in the year ahead?
It's nice for you to ask that, Michael, because we're a small country. Sometimes people wonder, why do we need remote sensing? Why do we need a satellite? Because it takes 1 hour to drive, and you won't even get a ticket from east to west of Singapore. So you could do a lot of terrestrial observation. And I think how this pandemic has turned out was people start to realize the ubiquitous access of satellites, because they can't travel. We're all locked down. And then they realize, hey, I need to know how that construction is going on in some other parts of the world. There are many Singapore investments overseas, or I need to know what's going to happen here. And then they turn to realize, hey, I do need remote sensing now. And that acceptance and that resonance with what satellite can produce in terms of imagery starts to resonate more with people. So I thought that was something good to share. And we do run a project with the World Bank based out of Singapore to say how remote sensing, observations can help with disaster relief. And I think in a time like this, when it's very hard for disaster relief missions to go out to travel across borders, these kind of information are starting to be more appreciated than before. So I thought that was a little good thing, to promote the space tech industry. Thank you.
That's a fantastic a piece of a promotion to look forward to, and certainly something that a lot of folks are maybe learning about as they look to other countries that are getting involved in the very, very global space industry. I want to then direct this as well to Oren. Oren, when you look at what your opportunities are moving forward, give us a little bit of a window into what excites you and maybe a milestone upcoming for STEMRAD.
No, thank you. Yeah, so it's a very exciting time for STEMRAD. We're part of NASA's Artemis mission to take people back to the moon and onto Mars, where they'd be exposed to deep space radiation, solar particle events. So we have the great privilege of providing a piece of equipment called AstroRad to protect these astronauts in these voyages. One breaking news, if you will, is that the operations with our vest are about to begin on the International Space Station November 2nd. So just a few weeks away, we're going to have multiple crew wearing the vest for an ergonomic study. And then in a year's time, we're aboard Artemis 1 for the mission around the moon, in which, in collaboration with the Israeli Space Agency, German Space Agency, and NASA, we're going to be measuring the radiation deposition within the human body for the first time ever in deep space, and evaluating the efficacy of our protective solution there against the real life radiation. So very privileged, very grateful to have the support of the Israeli Space Agency, without which we'd be in a tough spot in our space endeavors. So really, thank you.
Wow, and another announcement here during this panel. Thank you, Oren. I mean, that's really exciting to hear, and it's something that if people really are going to be living and working in space, they're going to need to be protected from radiation. So quite a life-saving innovation that you guys are working on there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
As we come to our final minute here, I really want to thank each and every one of you for your insight. I mean, we're looking at a very international panel of CEOs. You each see the really ground level of what's going on in your country and where your business is focused on. But as we've seen the space industry continue to grow, I think this is something that we'll continue hearing is what opportunities came out of the COVID-19 pandemic rather than more so the setbacks, especially for the space world. I mean, this has been a really interesting environment to be as a reporter covering, and it all is made possible through the companies and businesses that are operating amidst a host of challenges, not the least of which may be technical difficulties. So I thank you all for bearing with us today. I thank you to the IAC 2020 for hosting this panel and making this discussion possible. I think it's one that I really hope brings some insight as well as even just some promise to what businesses can look forward to in the year ahead. That it's as tough as the world may seem right now and as difficult as it might be to operate, that there are opportunities, that there are investors willing to continue to back the space industry and back promising and innovative businesses. So thank you all for joining me, and I hope that you all have a great rest of the week and enjoy IAC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.